What do you think of my shirt?
What's on it?
Roses and some,
Well,
I don't know, ivy.
I'm going to tell you that I don't like it because you made fun of my shirt when we got on here.
What? No, I made fun of it because it says Abercrombie and it's not the year 1999. So,
This is from like 2004. Thank you.
oh, excuse me. Well, I thought you were getting rid of clothing and I specifically said that shirt should go.
Nope, keeping this one forever. But no, I like your shirt. It's not like your normal attire, but
No,
I
thought
like it.
Well, yeah, because it's summertime now, so I can, because I had 5 shirts that I wore all through winter and, and spring so far. So it's finally warming up down here. But point being, I got this on our last shoot at like a fishing outdoor store. So it's a really cool brand, but I always struggle with how many buttons to open. Like, how much taco meat do you show? You know?
No, nobody wants that. Button it up, button it back up, all the way up.
But if I were Ken Brennan, you'd be like, oh yeah, by all means.
If you were Ken Brennan, I'd be like, we don't need a shirt here at all.
Oh.
33, 1, 0. Main event of the evening. Thursday and half
It's Tuesday, and you're listening to Murder Unscripted.
What is up, crime crew? Welcome to episode 50 of Murder Unscripted, the most immersive true crime podcast on the internet. In the internet? On it.
On.
You're on the web. I'm your host, Ed Hydock, along with my bestie, Melissa Spivey.
Hey.
Listeners, it is a new month, which means the next 4 weeks we will be discussing true crime cases that relate to a specific theme, which will be different than the theme of our last month, for those who are just joining us. And our focus this month is crimes against radio and TV personalities. And it's a theme that we're calling Podcasters Killed the Radio Star, which is a nod to the 1981 pop hit from a band called The Buggies. Video killed the radio star. Melissa, do you remember that video and that song? And also, did you know it is the first video that ever aired on MTV?
So I did know that, but I don't remember it because I wouldn't be born for like another 8 years. So,
well, that's true. That's true.
But I do know that it aired on August 1st, 1981, like at midnight.
Get at it. You had to Google that. There's no way you remember that.
I only knew that because I used to like love the Video Music Awards, MTV VMAs, and they used to talk about it.
All right. Well, I am questioning that. I don't think you knew that, but
I know
proceed.
Everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, for this month, we are doing Podcasters Killed the Radio Star, and we have 2 cases about slain radio DJs and 1 case about a TV personality. And actually, for that episode, we will be returning to the land down under for a super recent case.
I'm excited about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So definitely stay tuned for that. And then to cap off the month, we have a really, really fun interview lined up that you will not want to miss, especially if you love other true crime podcasts. Which, I mean, I hope you do like true crime podcasts because you're listening to this one.
Yeah, you must.
I'm not allowed to tell you who the guest is, but here's a little hint. These guests are the best, not the worst. So if you know who I'm talking about, submit your guesses on like our Facebook page or shoot us an email or something. And the first 5 people to get it right will win themselves some super fun Murder Unscripted stickers.
It's true. And these stickers are no joke. I'm not going to lie. We have different shapes now, not just squares and circles. We got all kinds of stuff. But real quick, before we get started, if you like the show, please throw us a like, a follow, a subscribe. We would really, really appreciate it. It goes such a long way to help us grow and continue to do what we do. So with that being said, Melissa, take it away. What have you got for us?
All right. So I have probably a lesser known case. I usually try to look when we pick a case, I try to look and see like if it's been done a million times. But I think I only saw one other pod cover this case. And I'm kind of surprised because I'll be honest, it's not much of a whodunit, but it's definitely an adventure. There were a couple television shows that covered this case, which are actually part of my sources. There was an episode of Dateline. It was season 20, episode 51. I watched an episode of Sins and Secrets entitled Catalina. And I read a really great article on crimelibrary.org by Tori Richards about the case.
Cool.
So this week, we are hitting the West Coast, more specifically, the island of Catalina. And Catalina is about 22 miles off the coast of Southern California. Specifically, it's like 22 miles southwest of the main Los Angeles beaches, like Long Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, etc. So the island itself is about 22 miles long, and it's actually 76 square miles in size. And the island is home to just a little over 4,000 permanent residents. But it eventually, throughout the year, it plays host to almost 1 million visitors and tourists each year.
Wow.
Which is a lot of people.
I've never been out there. So I was in California one time, but I was just passing through. But I've always heard so many great stories about the places out there. I want to go sometime and check out these infamous beaches.
It's beautiful. I've been to San Diego, and it was amazing. But I've definitely never been to Catalina. Because it is... Well, it's still the playground for the rich and fabulous, but it actually used to kind of be like a secret getaway for the Hollywood elite. It's been home to celebs like Marilyn Monroe, John Wayne, Charlie Chaplin, a lot of famous people.
Nobody's going to remember who Charlie Chaplin is at this point. We need to start phasing out I think our listeners are going to be like, who the hell is Charlie Chaplin?
Well, if they're your age, they'll be like, oh, I remember when the talkies took over.
Yeah, when
Is that what they called
the talking picture box?
Exactly. So Catalina, they've shot a ton of movies on the island. And just to further push this narrative that it's this perfect and beautiful, idyllic little island, there's virtually no crime there. And up until the murder in the case that I'm talking about today, there had only been, I think they said 2 violent crimes ever recorded on the island. Well, it's Thursday, May 18th, 2006, and of course it's a gorgeous spring day in Southern California. And Donald Goodwin and his wife Helen, they're out on the water with some friends. They're about 7 miles from the coast of Catalina, kind of between Catalina and California. And they're just hanging out on the boat, just cruising around, enjoying the day. That's how it started, I should say. Pretty soon, though, Donald sees something floating in the water. And there are a bunch of seagulls perched on top of it. So Donald gets a little bit closer, and he is horrified to get close enough to realize this thing that the seagulls are on is a body. And the seagulls are scavenging the remains. So Donald immediately calls the Coast Guard and informs them of this grisly discovery.
This hits a little close to home because this is specifically about the show that I've been working on for the past couple months. So it's very triggering to me. It's PTSD.
I was wondering if you would cover it on that show.
I'm thinking about season 2, maybe.
Yeah, this is a good one. So the Coast Guard contacts the Sheriff's Department in Catalina, and Sheriff Deputy Jim Pennington responds. So when they get out there to the body and they haul it out of the water, it's in bad shape. So Sheriff Deputy Jim, he is able to tell that it's the body of a man, but he can't tell what race the victim is. He can't tell what age the victim is.
Man, so it's been out there a while. And I don't know if you've ever seen bloated body crime scene photos. They're some of the worst because they don't even look human sometimes, depending how long they've been in there. It's just bloated, wrinkled, skin's fallen off. I mean, the water has a way of destroying a body like nothing else.
Oh, that gives me the chills. Well, yeah, we'll find out how long this body had been in the water. But at this point, they were okay, it's a guy. That's all that we know. So while he and his crew are inspecting the body, they notice a few things right away. First of all, the body has no identification. And considering the state of the body, this is definitely a problem because now we have a John Doe. Another thing they notice is that barnacles have attached themselves to this man. And Pennington would later testify in court, quote, "For a barnacle to attach itself to an object like that, in my experience, it's taken 2 to 3 weeks," end quote.
kind of gross when you think about it, because you see them on the bottom of boats and stuff, not bodies.
Barnacles freak me out. I was watching a video about them when I was researching this, and oof.
There's barnacle scrapers. There's people that go into boats and scrape off barnacles. That's their whole job.
Wild. I always think of SpongeBob because that's how he curses. He'll be like,
That's
oh,
true.
barnacles.
I say it all the time.
You would. So as they're inspecting the body, they're looking for signs of like how our victim died and or how he ended up in the water. And they notice a wound on the victim's head, and they're like, this could be a bullet wound, potentially. But again, due to the state of the decomp and the bloating from the water, it's just really hard to tell exactly what made that hole.
Yeah, one thing I learned from that most recent series I was on is that not everybody found in the water is a murder victim. Like drunk idiots on boats, you got people who think they can swim and they can't, or they see this grand body of water, they're like, I can swim that, and they just die. So especially if they're not sure about the positivity, if they're not positive that was a gunshot, I mean, this could have been somebody who banged his head,
That was definitely a consideration. So they're still looking at the body, and the final thing that they really notice is the victim's hand. So the body is wearing a green tracksuit, and he's got like work gloves on. Well, one of the gloves came off, and they noticed that on the victim's left hand, the victim is missing portions of 3 fingers. So like in pictures, it looked like about 2/3 of the ring finger, middle finger, and index finger were missing. So the authorities aren't sure what happened or like what this means, but it's clear the fingers had been missing for a long time. Like they were very clearly healed. So whatever had happened had been years ago.
Like they don't have to check the pro bowling circuit, I guess.
Maybe he bowls with his right hand.
That's true. It's true. He's permanently giving the shocker.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. Sheriff Deputy Jim and his team, they decide to keep this information to themselves because they're like, that could be useful when we go to ID the victim. So the body's taken to the coroner's office, but there are no matching missing person reports, so that doesn't help. But they are, however, able to confirm our victim was a Caucasian man, and the preliminary cause of death is listed as drowning. So for now, he is listed as John Doe 88.
Just throwing this out there, if that is a gunshot and the cause of death was drowning, that means he was thrown in the water still alive. You know what I mean? So he was shot, and I just did a case like this, and it was it makes it sadder because they would have called for help after the gunshot. There's a chance they could have saved the victim. So this was clearly an intentional act.
Yeah, that always bums me out, like even more than normal. So it's a few days later now. It's May 22nd. So that's 4 days after the body was originally found in the water. And they decide to do an autopsy. And it's at this time that the cause of death is confirmed for real, because in the x-ray, like they can clearly see a bullet in John Doe's head.
That's sad. I mean, he probably wouldn't have lived anyway, but to know that drowning was the cause of death is still, I don't know, makes it worse.
It makes it worse, I think. I agree. So now they need to figure out who our John Doe is, and keep in mind, those waters where he was found, they're like major shipping routes. So investigators are like, this person could literally be from anywhere.
Yep.
How the hell are we going to figure this out? So shortly after the autopsy, a phone call comes in, and this call gets put through to LA Sheriff Sergeant Ken Clark. So the guy on the phone is this gentleman named Leo Rossi. And Leo was actually some kind of executive like in the entertainment world. And he had worked with some crazy famous bands like Led Zeppelin, The Who,
Damn.
and he even managed Fleetwood Mac for a time.
Wow, good for him. Did he have a beard and long hair? That's all I would assume he did.
I think he had long hair.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
That's just a given. You have to, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So Leo calls and he explains that his friend, Stephen B. Williams, is missing, and he's been missing since May 4th. Like, that was the last time anyone had heard from him. So Ken Clark is listening to Leo, and he goes to ask him, he's like, all right, well, does your friend Stephen have any identifying features? And Leo goes, actually, yeah, he's missing a portion of 3 of his fingers.
There's your guy.
And yes, and this is when we learned that his missing appendages were due to a woodshop accident back in junior high school.
Not to make fun of the guy, but it's so cliche.
It really is, I know. So now Ken is pretty sure that they have an ID on their John Doe, but just to be totally sure, they compared John Doe's dental records to that of Stephen Williams' dental records, and lo and behold, they match. So John Doe is 59-year-old Stephen B. Williams. So who was Stephen B. Williams, and how did he end up in the water with a bullet wound in his head? He was born on May 14th, 1947, and he was the youngest of two. He had an older sister named Jan, and they were a military family. Steve and Jan's father, Bailey Williams, he was a highly regarded Air Force colonel, and he was actually a fighter pilot in World War II, which is super cool.
That's super cool.
So the family lived in Hawaii for several years until Bailey retired in 1963, and then the family decided to relocate to California. But Stephen decided to stay in Hawaii. I mean, I would too. It's Hawaii.
You get the choice, yeah.
He began working towards his goal of working in the entertainment business, specifically the wonderful world of radio. So Stephen was passionate about music, and if anyone has ever had a voice for radio, it was Stephen B. Williams. He had that quintessential DJ voice and even earned himself the nickname of the Pipes.
Ooh, man, he must be good. Yeah, you could call
You
the
have
Pipes.
to listen to him. It's very, very radio. He's perfect for it.
Wow.
So in 1970, he got his first gig at a radio station in Honolulu, and he quickly made a name for himself. In 1980, he was offered a position at the legendary KBPI in Denver, Colorado. And there he was known as the voice of the Rockies.
Wow. That's high. That's a high honor.
It really is. People loved him. So Stephen B. and another guy, Don Hawkins, they had a drive time morning show called Stephen B. and the Hawk. And I don't think the show it wasn't necessarily the first of its kind, but it was definitely groundbreaking. One of Stephen's friends on the Dateline episode even said that Stephen B. and Don, they really pioneered the two hosts kind of comedy format. Cool. They mixed their rock and roll music with their witty humor and comedy bits. Apparently they would do celebrity spoofs, and they did Weird Al song parodies.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they sounded like they were a lot of fun, and all the promotional pictures I saw of them, they were doing something goofy. And they won a ton of awards, and they quickly became local celebrities in Denver. Had streaming been a thing back then, they would have been huge, because then everyone everywhere could listen to them.
Right.
And now it's time for Mr. Rambo's Neighborhood.
It's a beauty day in the neighborhood, beauty day for a neighbor, if you're not mine, if you're not my neighbor. Yo, hey, so how's it going? Okay, so, I'm expecting this stuff, from the UPS, that stands for United Parcel stuff. Yo, hey, okay, yeah, you're right on time. Come on in, okay?
Yeah, where do you want me to put this?
Oh, yeah, just sit it down anywhere, okay?
Thanks.
Yeah, all right. Wow.
Oh, boy, that was heavy.
Yeah, hey, it should better be. It's a tank track,
Oh, well, just sign here.
Okay. Hey, you did a pretty good job with that,
Well, we lift things all day long, you see. I guess you build up a little after a while.
Yeah, right.
So in addition to having a huge passion for music and radio, Stephen was also a fine wine connoisseur, and he was this amazing cook. A lot of his friends were on the Dateline, and they all talked about how he had such a knack for making amazing food. And he always knew exactly what wine to pair with the meal to just make his already amazing food even more incredible. Stephen seemed like a really good dude to have as a friend. The love, respect, and just the admiration that his friends had for him was so evident in the interviews. It was really touching how they talked about him. And he seemed to just have this larger-than-life personality on and off the radio, and I think that was a big part of his popularity, and it helped his audience build a connection with him.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're not as cool as Stephen B.
No, but it's, you know why? Because we're not using middle initials. Maybe I'm Edward L. from now on.
I would be Melissa L.
They call you the Pipes.
The pipe.
Definitely don't.
Unfortunately, though, by the early to mid 90s, radio was kind of going in a different direction. And the demand for that style of radio, and more specifically, the demand for Steven's like deep radio voice, was kind of losing steam.
Isn't that nuts? Because it's coming back. That's what people want to hear, like audiobooks almost.
Exactly. It's so weird. I'm like reading this and I'm like, what?
Yeah, just like that Abercrombie shirt. Keep hanging on. It's coming back.
This will always be in style, y'all. So suddenly we have this guy with this golden voice, but now he doesn't really know what to do with himself. So he kind of bounced between California and Colorado, and he would do smaller radio gigs here and there, and he did some voiceovers, and he actually got to work at a winery during this time, which he absolutely loved. And I got the feeling that he was that kind of person who could drink a wine and like be like, oh, there's notes of this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, they do it with cigars now too, and it's like, I taste tobacco and fire. That's
So by now it's about 2001, and Steven's father, Bailey, got really sick. And so Steven moved to Southern California to take care of him. At this time, his mother had been passed away for several years, and I'm not exactly sure what the sister was doing. She was definitely living on the East Coast. I saw a couple reports that she may have been in an accident, something, but Steven moved in and started taking care of his father until his father eventually passed in 2003. And by all accounts, Steven was devastated at the loss of his dad. I think that his parents had always been really, really supportive of him. And it was just a really tight, close-knit family. So when Bailey died, I think it just left Steven feeling really lost.
We've had that happen in a few stories, and you sometimes, oftentimes it's with the perpetrator, though. You know, the perpetrator goes off the rails because they had either a close relationship with their dad or wanted a close relationship with their dad, and they pass away, and it's, I don't know, it goes nuts from there.
No, it's true. I mean, I feel like that happens a lot.
Yeah.
However, Bailey's death also left Steven incredibly wealthy. Like, his father had left him about $2 million between
$2
stocks.
million.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Between stocks and assets and the money he had in the bank and like his estate, blah, blah, blah.
My dad's already had a conversation with me. He's like, when I pass, he gave me a key to a safe, and I'm like, so I have no idea what's in the safe. Come on, $2 million.
I'm sure that's what it is.
It's probably a stack of nudie magazines he doesn't want to part with.
Like vintage Playboys. Well, of course that money doesn't make up for the loss of his father, but regardless, this essentially made Steven like an overnight millionaire, which is amazing, but it wasn't so great for someone who wasn't good with money. And Steven was not good with money. You know, while working for the radio station, he had been earning really good money, but he was still living paycheck to paycheck. Like, the only good thing was that he was cognizant of his poor financial habits, and like he didn't want to make the same mistakes he had made in the past with like the money he got from his dad.
Okay.
So sometime in 2003, Steven was introduced through mutual friends to a couple named Harvey and Debbie Morrow. So Harvey introduces himself and he explains that he's a retired investment banker. I'm not quite sure what Debbie did for a living. I know that she only lived part-time in California with Harvey, and then like she lived part-time out of state for whatever she did for a living.
Okay.
The couple was renting a huge home in California from one of Steven's friends. But prior to this, Harvey had lived in Colorado for a time, and he used to listen to Steven B. and the Hawk. So that's kind of how like this friendship started. Like, I wouldn't say Harvey was starstruck, but he was definitely a big fan of Steven, and Steven was like so flattered.
I'm sure that'd be great.
Like
yeah.
He came up to him. He's like, "You're Steven B. I used to love your show, blah, 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 blah." And
That's
Steven's
cool.
like, "Hey."
Hello, I'm the Pipes.
Exactly. So pretty soon, Harvey and Steven are like besties, and they'd hang out all the time. And especially, you know, when Debbie was at like their other home in a different state, the guys would hang out. And Debbie absolutely adored Steven. She's on the Dateline, and she raved about like how funny he was and how he had the best taste in music and what an amazing cook he was.
He sounded like a really well-rounded dude.
He really does, yeah. He just seemed like such a genuinely good human and a good friend. So one day, Debbie and Harvey, they come to Steven with this opportunity. Harvey recently purchased a 69-foot yacht he named Elmara.
Wow.
So he was in the process of like renovating and upgrading it. And when it was finished, he and Debbie were planning to live on the boat and sail the world. Like they would sail to Alaska in the summer and then they would sail down to the Caribbean in the winter.
Must be nice.
I know, right? Bougie. So the couple asked Steven, what do you think about coming on the sailing adventure with us and you can be our chef? Because we talked about this. Steven's an amazing cook and his wine knowledge like rivals a sommelier. So
I'm sorry, a what? It's a sommelier. A Somali pirate?
So they're like a wine professional. Like they're like super duper into wine. And you have to take all these courses and classes and tests. There's only like 200 and some of them in like the entire world.
Oh no, it's the sommeliers.
Sommelier, yes. They are very big into wine and know like they're the type of people that can taste it and be like, these came from grapes in the southern blah, blah, blah of France and yada, yada, yada.
Wow.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm like, that's a nice box that wine came out of.
Past the Arbor Mist.
Exactly. So this offer was like perfect for Steven for a couple reasons. First of all, this would be a really good distraction for him, like from the grief of losing his father. Like what a nice way to, make yourself feel better. So
totally.
Second, Steven had always wanted to sail around the world. Like this was a dream of his. And then lastly, he also had dreams of opening a restaurant somewhere in the Caribbean. He wanted to be the head chef and he wanted to name the restaurant Bailey's to honor his late father.
Oh man, how cool. He should have taken that $2 million and done it.
Well, that was the plan, but we don't quite get there. But to Steven, this was the absolute opportunity of a lifetime. So they ask him this and Steven's like, let me think about, yes, absolutely yes. So Harvey and Debbie are pumped and Harvey's like, okay, well, we're not quite ready to go yet. We're almost there, but don't make any long-term plans. So let's talk about Harvey. Not much is known about his early life. He was born sometime in the 1950s, so he was like early to mid-50s when he met Steven. Currently, as of 2025, he's 74 years old, so figure out the math. But anyway, in the 1980s, Harvey was living in Florida, and he was involved in some shady business dealings. Sources kept saying he was a major player in boiler room operations. Do you know what that is? Because I didn't.
No, I have no idea what that is.
All right, so I looked it up, and it's a scam. And it's a scam where like fake salespeople pressure people, usually over the phone, into buying fake or worthless investments. So like you get a phone call out of the blue, and the caller would be like, I'm from this fancy schmancy investment firm. And they would try to get you to buy into some investment, and they'd be loud and talk fast. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You'll regret this if you wait.
Trying to make you feel guilty for not you're the idiot.
Yeah. And then so like the person on the phone who gets the call at this point is like frazzled and is like, okay. Like, and they agree to this investment. And then suddenly the investment company doesn't exist. And when you try to like call the salesman,
you can't even get a hold of anybody then.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the number's disconnected and you're broke. So
it's awful.
He was doing things like this. And eventually Harvey and like his fellow fraudsters, they got caught. And all of the guys were charged with corruption except for Harvey. This little bitch hid out until the statute of limitations was up. Like, that's even worse than the actual scam. What a weenie.
People that scam other people to like mess with your hard-earned money, the scum of the earth, and anything bad that happens to them, they absolutely deserve. They're the worst kind of people.
So Harvey moves to Colorado, and like that's where he would have heard Steven on the radio. And he meets a woman named Deborah, not to be confused with Debbie, who's his wife at the time of our story. So Harvey and Deborah end up getting married, and they have a few kids together. And from the outside, Harvey and Deborah and their kids, like, this is a beautiful and successful family. Harvey's an investment banker at a firm in Colorado. Deborah's a lawyer. They owned like this huge McMansion. I think they both had Mercedes, but they both had luxury cars. They were always flashing designer clothes, and they had a whole bunch of motorcycles. The only problem was that while Deborah was indeed a lawyer, Harvey was actually not a wildly successful investment banker like claimed he was. Unbeknownst to everyone, Harvey was in the HR department at that fancy investment firm.
It's like, what is that? Assistant to the regional manager?
Yes, assistant to the.
He wasn't even lying about working there, but he was lying about what he did. Like, he wasn't a broker.
Right. So he's lying about that. And I'm honestly there wasn't a lot about his first marriage. And I'm not sure if Deborah knew at the time that he was a liar or if she found out later. But eventually she got sick and tired of the lies and she filed for divorce from him. And according to the LA Times, Deborah told everyone about the investment banker lie, like right after the divorce.
Good.
So that's why I'm not sure how much she knew while they were married.
I think she had inklings the whole time and then was just kind of putting up with it, but it probably got to a point where you couldn't ignore it anymore.
That's kind of the vibe I was getting. Well, Harvey did not take news of this divorce well, so he did what any logical person would do. He set one of Deborah's dresses on fire.
Got her.
Yeah,
good job.
Good one. So in 1996, he was charged with misdemeanor arson. So good job, bro. So once the divorce is final, Harvey gets out of Colorado and he moves to Texas. And this is where he would meet his second wife, Debbie. So early on in their dating, Harvey and Debbie had like talked about what they wanted to do when they retired, and they both had said they wanted to sail the world. So at some point, Harvey proposes to Debbie with this giant ass $25,000 diamond ring.
Wow.
And we're talking like 1998 $25,000. I don't even know what that is today.
A lot of money.
They get married in 2000, and eventually they end up in California, where they're renting a home from one of Steven's friends. But keep in mind, they still have their giant lakefront home in Texas as well. And it was around this time that Harvey purchased that 69-foot yacht, which like then he docks in either LA or Catalina. So this whole time that Harvey's like renting all these homes and buying yachts and all this stuff, he's also being a deadbeat dad who's trying to weasel his way out of paying child support.
It's the worst.
He's a shit human. But this next part's actually kind of funny. So Harvey gets to California, he buys this yacht and joins some fancy-ass marina in LA. And he tells everyone he's a retired Wall Street executive. And like, that lie may have worked in Florida or Texas or wherever. But in LA, the real rich and fabulous people knew Harvey was a poser almost immediately. In that article I mentioned from crimelibrary.org, the one detective says, quote, "People who didn't know him thought he was worth between 12 and 30 million. Wow. But for the people who do have money and meet him, within the first 5 minutes, they know he's full of BS."
I feel like you can tell right away. I don't know many people that claim to be worth $30 million, but I imagine you can quickly tell the difference between fake money and real money.
It gets better, and I think it's in the Dateline. People are talking about how Harvey would dress when he went to the marina and how he dressed like the skipper from Gilligan's Island.
Oh, no.
And one lady said that he was, quote, always dressed in costume.
Oh, no. He was playing the part of a rich guy.
All right, so that's Harvey. So back to present day in our story. Stephen has just agreed to join Harvey and Debbie Morrow on their yacht to cook for the couple, act as a deckhand, and of course, like, be with them and see the world. So, I had told you that Stephen had received quite a substantial inheritance from his father, and we talked about how he wasn't good with money. So how lucky is it that he has just befriended Harvey, who is like such a stock market whiz? Like, what a crazy coincidence. Yeah.
Right?
So Harvey tells Stephen that he would be so happy to act as his financial manager, and he would set Stephen up with some offshore accounts. And like, I wasn't sure why people would do that.
You don't have to pay taxes on it. It's a perfect storm because you have Stephen, who is admittedly bad at managing his own money, and here comes this guy coincidentally swooping in, who's just a master money, the money guy, and also a master manipulator who he can definitely talk the talk. So I mean, it's easy to see why he would be swayed by the allure of somebody who can take this $2 million and maybe turn it into a lot more.
100%. And just like that, Stephen pretty much just handed over his entire inheritance to Harvey.
No. Gone.
I know.
Gone.
Well, we can already tell this isn't going to end well, but we still have a few more twists and turns. So now I'm going to kind of jump around a bit. So I want to talk about Harvey's yacht. When he first purchased it, I think it was a little bit of a fixer-upper. So Harvey befriended this guy at the marina, Greg Labano, and Greg had his own boat, and he did like all the stainless work on the yachts in the marina. He was a big steel fabricator.
Okay.
So this Greg guy's interviewed on the TV shows, and he's like, at first Harvey's making just small upgrades, doing what he could, like when his finances allowed it. But then suddenly Harvey was not only upgrading like everything on the yacht, but he's upgrading this like top of the line everything. He installed teak wood flooring. He had fireplaces on the yacht. He had flat screen TVs everywhere.
That happens all the time in these crime cases when people kill people for money. The people around these suspects notice that all of a sudden they drive a new truck, they got new shoes on, they got a whole new wardrobe. And you see it a lot. And a lot of times in women, when they either extort somebody or, you know what I mean? Or swindle, I don't know what the word is, swindle from their own organization. You see them buying all this, going on trips and buying new cars. It's just a very different person that people see. And it usually is a sign that something shady is going on behind closed doors.
Well, and it's like dumb to go from, not being able to afford much to all of a sudden being like, oh, check out my Range Rover,
embezzle.
Land
was the
Rover,
word.
whichever one. What?
Swindle. It was embezzle. I was thinking of, not swindle.
Embezzle. Yes.
I was thinking with the Somali pirate theme.
Sommelier. So, in addition to all that stuff, Harvey also bought a super advanced and like expensive GPS navigation system. And one thing that he bought that all the TV shows made this huge deal of, Harvey purchased and had installed a $50,000 washer and dryer.
Wow.
The one guy on the show is like, he could have bought a second boat for that $50,000.
Seriously.
I don't know what this washer did to make it so special, but like, unless it washed the clothes, dried the clothes, folded the clothes, put the clothes away, and gave sexual favors, like,
right? If that existed, I would refinance my house. No joke.
Of course you would. We don't need to eat this week, guys. We need this washer.
Sorry, I'll be doing laundry. Hold my calls.
Brenda will be like, wow, all of a sudden Ed is really into helping me with the laundry. This is
He's
great.
washing shit that's clean.
Well, unless the washer does all that, I think you got ripped off. But needless to say, Harvey had absolutely no qualms about dropping thousands of dollars into this boat. And his friend Greg saw all of these upgrades, and he knew that Harvey was paying for all this stuff in cash. And he's like, so did you win the lottery? And Harvey laughed it off, and he just explained that some of his old stock investments had recently paid off.
He basically did win the lottery. I mean, somebody handed him $2 million.
I know. Well, meanwhile, Steven's just kind of cooling his heels, waiting to move onto the boat and start this grand adventure. But time and time again, the day to set sail was delayed. And Stephen's getting frustrated at this point because A, he was living with Harvey in that rented home. And I think it's because once he sold his dad's estate, it didn't make sense for him to like rent or buy anything because he's supposed to be going on this like sailing trip. And
which is never happening. This trip is bullshit.
On top of like all of that, Stephen was like an unpaid laborer helping Harvey with all of these upgrades and stuff on the boat. And eventually they did make a step, I guess, in the right direction by actually moving on to the boat. But like that didn't mean they were leaving anytime soon. So by spring of 2006, things are not going great. There was still like no date set in stone to begin this yachting adventure. Stephen's car got broken into. And he had some important things in his trunk, like his laptop, his passport, checkbook, some personal documents, and like a lot of his financial documents. So Stephen called police and, they come out, and while they're taking a report, they noticed that the car didn't show any signs of forced entry. Like none of the windows were broken. There were no like crowbar marks or anything where someone could have pried the trunk open.
Yeah, this was definitely somebody that like either knew Stephen to get in the car or knew where Stephen's keys were to get in the car. But it was like 100% somebody who knew that stuff was in there and knew how to get in there.
Yeah, 100%. And like, but most importantly, and this question obviously is not going to come up for a little bit until after Stephen's body was found, but everyone's wondering, is there a connection between the thief and the killer?
Is his name Harvey?
Yes. Ding, 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 ding.
What's happening with him being broke? Stephen.
Oh, okay. So Stephen and his longtime friend Sylvia, they used to meet for lunch like every single week. And one week in late April of 2006, so this is just a couple days before the murder, Stephen confessed to Sylvia that he was so hard up for money, he couldn't even afford to split their lunch bill that day. And Sylvia's shocked. She's like, what do you mean you're broke? You're literally a multi-millionaire. And this is when Stephen explained that Harvey had pretty much all of Stephen's money tied up in these offshore bank accounts. But Stephen's not even sure where the money is or what country it was in.
Even close friends, if you tell them that kind of information, red flags are going up all over the place. They're going to be like, wait a minute.
Well, yeah, Sylvia's sitting there and she's trying to like process this, and she says something about financial documents between Harvey and Stephen's like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
Like, no, I just handed him a pile of money.
Yeah, so Sylvia goes, you handed someone $2 million without any sort of paperwork?
See, I hate to even like bring this up, but like as much as you want to fault Harvey for this, Stephen should have like had a little bit of foresight. I get that con men can be conniving, but this isn't like, we're not talking $100 or $1,000 that you're taking a risky investment with, like $2 million and just hands it over. Like,
I think that Stephen was like such a good human that it didn't even cross his mind that someone could be so terrible. I think you do that sometimes when people like say or do something. I think that because you are such a genuinely good person, you are like sometimes shocked when someone is not a good person. Like the people who leave us bad reviews, like they're just trolling to be dicks. And I feel like because you, as Ed Hideout, would never be that cruel to anyone, I feel like when I'm like, they're just being dicks, I feel like you're like, why would someone do that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm just so much more bitter and cynical that I'm like, everyone's a dick just for fun.
And it might stem from like, I know how hard we work on this. And it's so hard to see hateful comments without knowing what goes into something. So it's like, I don't know. It's frustrating.
Well, and it's a good thing that you're like that. Like, it's a good thing that because you're such a good person, you can't imagine other people not being. Like, you give so much respect that you can't imagine people not giving you that same respect.
I know. And it bites me all the time, but whatever.
But we love you because of it.
Well, thanks.
So Stephen was like, it'll be okay. I'm going to talk to Harvey about the money and everything will be fine. I'm going to ask him to take me to whatever country the money is in and I'll get it back. And then he promised Sylvia that next time they met for lunch, Stephen would pay. Unfortunately, though, that was the final lunch that Sylvia and Stephen would ever have together.
So sad.
I know. So for the first week or so of May, we don't have a ton of information on like what happened, but I do know that steel fabricator guy, Greg, he was helping Harvey with something on the boat, and he kind of noticed that there were no signs of Stephen anywhere. Nowhere, even in his little cabin bunk area, it was completely empty, nothing in it. In one of the interviews, he goes, it was completely sterile.
Wow.
So that's kind of weird. And he says something to Harvey. He's like, where's Stephen? And Harvey's like, oh, he moved. He moved to Hawaii. He moved and he's not going to go on the trip with us.
So shady. Cue the crow.
Cue the crow.
Which, as a reminder, is something we use when something ominous happens.
The way I think about it is if dun 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 sounds good in your head, that's your cue the crow moment.
He should have been flying this entire story, but I feel like in the world of Steve, like maybe it was lunch with Sylvia where he's like, yeah, just hand it over $2 million. She would have been hearing the dun dun dun, hearing the crows fly.
100%. Sylvia, these people were really good friends. So meanwhile, Harvey's saying he moved, whatever. So meanwhile, Stephen's friends are trying to reach him and his phone's just going to voicemail. He's not calling anyone back, nor is he returning emails, nothing. And around this time is his birthday. So it's even weirder that like his friends aren't hearing from him or can't get a hold of him. So his friends start contacting each other, being like, hey, like, have you talked to Stephen? I can't get a hold of him. And these friends are all comparing notes and they realize that no one has seen or heard from Stephen in several days. So Sylvia finally calls Harvey and she's like, Harvey, where is Stephen? What is going on? And Harvey tells her that Stephen had decided to take a vacation to Hawaii. He's really depressed over his dad and he just needed to get away. And Sylvia knows this is a lie. A, she knows that he's broke. Where would he get the money for Hawaii?
Yeah.
B, why would he go and not tell anyone, her or someone else?
So yeah, why would Harvey know this and not any of his close friends?
Right, it makes no sense. And Sylvia happened to know that Stephen would definitely not have gone to Hawaii because he had just had a friend pass away who lived in Hawaii and like they had talked about how hard it would be to go there.
Oh.
So when Sylvia mentions this to another friend, the person's like, wait a second. Harvey told me that Stephen went to Mexico.
The more lies you tell, the harder it is to remember the truth. So lies are going to get you caught quick.
It's true. And stop adding so much detail. Just make it simple. Tell the truth. So this is about the time we're going to go back to the beginning of our story. Stephen's body is found in the water and the police get the call from Leo that identifies him. So I'm designating Stephen's friends as the MU MVPs of this episode.
Wow, group award.
I know, it is a group award because they really put together every piece of information that they had and they went to the police and like everyone gave detectives the same name, Harvey Morrow. So on May 25th, 2006, they're able to get a search warrant for Harvey's boat and they get there, but when they get there, Harvey's not there.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, exactly. But they can search without him because they have the search warrant.
Right.
So the first thing they notice is how clean the boat is. Like, it is spotless. One detective on the show says it was so clean you could have eaten off the floor.
Wow.
So the detectives and the forensic team are searching this yacht from top to bottom. And while there's no blood, there's no signs of a struggle, but there's also absolutely no sign that Stephen ever even, like, was on the boat, let alone living on there for a little while.
Gigantic red flag.
Right. Like, he had been on there for at least 2 months, probably, at least.
Yeah,
something would have been there.
Personal effects of some kind.
I was at your house for what, 2 hours last night, and I think I left my scrunchie there. Like,
You left your watermelon water too.
Oh man, see, I leave everything.
I drank it, so don't go looking for it.
It's delicious, isn't it?
Yes.
So one of the things police do find is this ultra high-tech navigation system that I talked about earlier. They're hoping that their forensic people are able to see like where the boat has been, but we find out that this navigation system has never even been used. Like, they're able to tell that it had never even been turned on.
It's because he just wanted all the bells and whistles. Like, he's one of those guys that buys $1,000 worth of golf clubs and new shoes and all the golf supplies that you need, and then goes out and can't hit it. Like, has never taken a golf lesson in his life, but man, it sure does look the part. $700 driver,
100%. Like, he would go out and buy everything for it, and
but again, just a total poser.
A total poser, just like the LA people were like, you're a poser.
Yep.
So while they're looking for, anything on the yacht, they come across a manual for a handheld GPS system, a Garmin C60, I believe. But they don't find the actual piece of equipment itself. They only find the manual, which honestly, that is not strange to me, only because my husband keeps the manual to everything we've ever owned.
I have one right here. See what it says.
Do you? For what?
I don't know. It says tool manuals. Ready?
Oh, nice.
A Ryobi weed whacker.
I love it. Well, we'll be able to tell that you did kill someone or didn't kill someone. I don't know.
Or that I used to have a Ryobi weed whacker.
Or that. Maybe that. So while they're searching the yacht, police are kind of waiting to see if Harvey's going to return home. They really need to talk to him at this point. But as they finish the search and they begin to leave, they tell the yacht people that if they happen to see Harvey, please ask him to give us a call. The yacht worker's like, he was just here. He was literally standing over there watching you guys for the last hour.
He was creeping on him. No way.
Yes, he was standing there. He had even asked one of the forensic people, "Oh, what are you guys doing over there?" But they didn't know what he looked like.
They wouldn't know him. Yeah, the forensic guy wouldn't know who it is.
Isn't that wild? He's just standing there watching the whole thing, and he was like, I imagine he did that Homer Simpson meme where he slides back into the bushes.
That's a serial killer move there.
Yes, it is. So when police find this out, they're like, okay, an innocent person wouldn't have done that.
Right.
So now things are falling into place for detectives. They know that Harvey conned Stephen out of his inheritance, and this is just even more confirmed when they find the ledger for the yacht, and they discover that for all of his faults, Harvey was at the bare minimum damn good at documenting his finances. His ledger, in meticulous detail, showed every single purchase he had made for the yacht, equaling $1.7 million.
That's exactly what almost $2 million was the inheritance.
Yes, almost exactly every penny.
What an idiot. So he's doing that for a couple reasons, because just knowing the kind of guy he is, that he's a show off.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people do this. What they do is they keep track of every upgrade they make to something. So if they go to sell it, they can be like, this is what it features, all the money I put into it. So that there's dual purpose for this. Well, he might have OCD, but also he's probably working on his next con when he goes to sell all this stuff.
Oh, you're probably right. Well, guess what else police find out? They find out that this yacht was not even equipped to travel around the world.
Oh my God. So he wasn't even taking that trip. I could see that coming.
And before you ask about his wife, Debbie, she had absolutely no idea about the evil man she was married to. She was completely conned too, and it's actually really sad. She's in the Dateline and she's talking about how she really genuinely loved Harvey and how it was just so hard for her to believe that he would have hurt Stephen, let alone killed him. And then she goes, quote, I don't think Harvey even liked me. You know, love is not only blind. In my instance, it's also deaf and dumb, end quote.
It's so sad because these he's carrying it over into his personal life too. It's just con men have a way of acting, and it encompasses everything in life: relationships, money, how they treat other people, how they treat waitresses, things as dumb as
Yes.
that.
And I mean, like her whole world is flipped upside down. Like, she loved this person, and everything she knew about her husband of 6+ years was a lie.
Awful.
Oh my God, wait. Remember how I told you Harvey bought that giant-ass $25,000 engagement ring?
Yeah, I was going to say, at least he did that for her. Give her something.
It was a cubic zircon.
Oh my God, it wasn't even real.
It was a fake ring.
See, I'm so gullible. I should have known.
It was a fake freaking ring.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt with the ring at least.
Nope. At the end of the date line, she symbolizes like saying goodbye, like being done with him by throwing all of the fake jewelry into the water. Kind of dramatic.
No kidding. That is dramatic. That's so pre-produced.
Yeah. Keith Morrison loved it, but whatever.
You know how many producers were involved in that scene, convincing her to do that before that? Yeah.
They were like, this is TV gold.
It's all fake.
Well, back to the investigation. It is crystal clear to everyone that Harvey killed Stephen, but really everything they have so far is circumstantial. And the police have a huge problem. Nobody knows where Harvey is. Like,
He's still
after
missing.
that day he fled. So police learned that Harvey had connections everywhere, including Central America, specifically Belize. He had dealings in the British Virgin Islands. So police are basically searching everywhere for him. They don't even know where to turn. But unfortunately, they strike out at every turn. So in the meantime, police need to figure out where Stephen was shot. Like, where geographically, where was he shot?
Mm-hmm.
So we know he was in the ocean, but that doesn't narrow it down. And the navigation system on the boat was never used, so that doesn't help. So this part is so cool to me. Police meet with some sort of like oceanographer, and this person is able to determine where in the ocean his body went overboard.
They use the currents. It's one of the coolest forensic techniques out there.
It's so cool. So if you picture the island of Catalina, and basically it's tall or pretty long from north to south, and then it's narrow, except for about halfway down, the island gets wider. Picture a lowercase d.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on the far west side of the island, where the wider part is, it's still undeveloped. So Stephen's body was found on the east side of the island. So the oceanographer was able to tell that he would have gone overboard all the way on the west side, and the ocean current would have like brought him down.
Sucked him around. Wow.
Yeah, he would have been in a whirlpool.
A lot of times they'll drop in something of the same weight or like a pig carcass and just watch it and track it, like put a tracker on it and see where it goes.
That's so cool. I mean, it's not cool that they have to do that, but just the forensics that they know how to do.
Yeah, it's so
cool.
so interesting.
This is so important because I told you that part of the island is undeveloped. There's no reason for anyone to be on that side of the island. So how did he get to that side of the island, and why was that where he was dumped? So by now, spring is long gone and summer is becoming a distant memory as we've reached September of 2006. Police are super frustrated. They have this murder victim, and the man who they know did it is nowhere to be found. So we're going to take a break from the sunshine-filled world of the rich and fabulous in California, and we are going to Montana.
Oh, that's a weird twist.
It's a weird twist. So we are at Pete's Auto Dealership. They sell used cars.
Where's the story go?
I know. I told you there were twists and turns. So Pete's has recently hired a new employee. And right away, the other employees can tell that this new guy was not from around these here parts, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
This mysterious stranger is none other than our good buddy, Harvey Morrow, who, by the way, introduced himself to everyone as Harvey Morrow.
Okay, he didn't even use he used his real name? Wow.
He literally used his real name.
He is an idiot.
He's so dumb. So he's working at this used car lot, and he's pretty much rubbing everyone the wrong way. He's smug, he's cocky, he's a braggart, and as one guy in the Dateline puts it, Harvey didn't really fit in with the down-to-earth meat and potatoes kind of folk in Montana.
We stuck out like a sore thumb.
Uh-huh. But Harvey does manage to kind of make like one friend. The finance manager at the dealership was a man by the name of Joe Persitich. So Joe is on the date line, and he refers to Harvey as quite a character.
Yeah, could you see him showing up in his skipper hat?
That's
Montana?
what I was thinking.
And
Like
an
in his boat
ascot?
shoes.
Yeah, like, come on.
So the two men, Joe and Harvey, they get chatting one night, and Harvey tells Joe all about his former life where he was a wildly successful stockbroker, and he lived in a sprawling lakefront home in Texas, and he had fancy cars and designer clothes and the perfect life, until one day tragedy struck. So Harvey proceeds to tell Joe that his wife and a bunch of her friends, they had taken the yacht for a trip to the Gulf of Mexico. But during their trip, a horrible storm came in and capsized the yacht, killing Harvey's wife and all of her friends.
What a scumbag.
And now poor Harvey is just a sad, lonely widower who couldn't bear to stay in the home that he had shared with his beloved wife.
Oh, yeah, such a victim.
So this air quotes tragedy convinced him to give up his worldly possessions and embrace the simple life there in Montana. And Joe's sitting there listening to the story, and he's like, oh my goodness, what a crazy story. And then he begins to think, maybe a little too
Yeah,
crazy.
for real.
Well, Harvey needs to just shut his mouth, because what he doesn't know about Joe is a retired police officer.
Oh, man, he saw right through that.
Oh, 100%. And Harvey's crazy story is like setting off Joe's policeman's spidey senses. So Joe does a little Googling, a little Google stalking. And when he Googles Harvey Morrow, because he gave his real name,
Of course
the
he did.
first Google hit that comes up is about the murder of a beloved radio DJ and how the, quote, person of extreme interest was missing. And Joe, once a cop, always a cop, he calls the Montana police first, who they get in touch with the California police, and they're like, are you guys looking for Harvey Morrow? Because we got him.
Like, yes, we are.
And just a few days later, Harvey is arrested at the car dealership.
Wow.
I know. So when they end up going through, of course, he had a rented Range Rover or Land Rover or something. Because I'm like, you can't just get like a Camry.
Call yourself something else and lay low, and he wouldn't be caught. He'd still be on the run.
But he can't. He's such a narcissist.
Yes.
Well, when they go through his SUV, they find guns and like a bunch of ammo. So God only knows what he was planning. So the police begin interrogating Harvey, and of course he's like super vague and evasive. He won't admit to anything. And the cops on Dateline, they felt like Harvey thought he could outsmart them, which does not surprise me in the least, because we know he's like a cocky little bitch.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets extradited back to California, and while police do have enough to like get Harvey on fraud and stealing Steven's money and like those kind of charges, they really don't have much to convict him of murder. They don't have the murder weapon. There's no blood or even DNA from Steven on the boat. So police get back to the drawing board like they know they need a smoking gun to put this guy away for murder. So one day, in February of 2007, detectives get a phone call from a man named David Court. And David's like head honcho at the yacht club where Harvey had his boat docked.
Okay.
And so one day, David was doing some research in the yacht club's library.
Oh, wait. Who knew yacht clubs had a library? That's cool.
Oh my God. Okay, I didn't know that either.
That's awesome.
That's so fancy. I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. You got a library. So David's going through like old cabinets, and in the back of one of the drawers, he finds this old wooden box, and it had records dating back to the 1920s, which
Wow.
is already crazy.
Yeah.
But then behind the records is something wrapped in like napkins. So David investigates closer, and he discovers that wrapped in those napkins is a handheld GPS system.
He like hid this in the library. That's wild.
And David's like, well, this is kind of weird. So he goes to turn it on. It doesn't have batteries. So he puts it aside. And when he gets home later, he installs fresh batteries and he turns it on. The GPS shows the path of the most recent trip, like the last time it was on.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that the GPS was at the marina, left the marina and traveled to the far side of Catalina Island.
Wow.
And then it showed that it went around in circles for a little while and then returned back to the marina.
Where he was dumping the body.
Uh-huh. So David was like, that's a super weird ass path for anyone to take. Like, why would you do that? And of course, he knew all about everything going on with Harvey and Steven. So David calls detectives and tells them about the GPS. And when police get it, sure enough, it's the same make and model, a Garmin C60, that matched the manuals that they had found on the boat back during their search.
Clutch.
So then cops decided to talk to Harvey's friend, Greg, the steel guy. And Greg confirms that that was definitely Harvey's GPS because Greg was even there when he bought it. So police are able to get a specialist in to search the GPS because apparently some of the data gets lost if you remove the batteries.
That's true. Not that I don't know about that GPS, just electronics in general. Like if you leave the batteries out for long enough, certain information stays and certain doesn't.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, luckily, this specialist was able to use like government software to like recall all of this lost information. And right there on the screen, it shows that the boat left the marina at 3:17 p.m. on May 4th, which we know that's the last day anyone had spoken to Steven.
Wild.
By 8:35 p.m. that night, the boat was on the far side of Catalina, where it remained stationary for a while. And then the boat began returning to the marina around 2:14 a.m. on May 5th.
Wonder why he waited so long. That's like that's a little under 6 hours. Like, yeah, I wonder if he was doing that to try to be like, I was out of town on a boat trip. Like, try to make it look like something it wasn't, because that's a long time.
It is a long time. I know that they said he was going really slow, like the boat was going really slow, but I still don't feel like it would take that long to get like however many miles away it was.
Yeah.
So now police know that this is Harvey's GPS and they know that he was on that far side of Catalina Island, but they know all that stuff, but they can't yet prove was Steven on that boat as well. So detectives are able to get access to cell phone records, and guess what? Steven's cell phone and Harvey's cell phone both pinged on the far side of the island at the exact time that matched with the GPS data.
He's cooked.
And then like right after that, Steven's cell phone went straight to voicemails, and Harvey's continued to ping its way back to the marina.
As much of a smoking gun as you need.
Right. So detectives feel like they have enough evidence to move forward with the trial. But before we get there, by December of 2008, there was a preliminary hearing to figure out if there was a case against Harvey. So his lawyer decided to tell everyone that Steven was depressed and took his own life. And the judge was like, no, you're going to trial.
Was that his exact words?
Yes, exactly. Verbatim.
Quote.
So the trial for the first-degree murder of Steven B. Williams began on Thursday, May 12th, 2011, which is like almost 5 years to the day when Steven was murdered.
Yeah.
And the reason it took so long was because there was over 30,000 pages of evidence.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And of course, they were saying like the big motive was financial. So the trial begins and the prosecutor does their opening statements. And then during the defense team's opening statements, they drop a friggin' bomb. The defense team had documentation saying that Steven's father, Bailey, had borrowed money from Harvey back in the 80s, and that the money they're saying Harvey stole was actually owed to him from Bailey's estate.
What?
And
I'm doubting
the
this.
defense had a promissory note to prove it.
I don't know. Remember last week there was questionable, or 2 weeks ago maybe, they faked a document and got caught doing it. I think it was in the, what's her name, Wormus.
Yeah, you're
It
right.
says
There was
Worm as
something that
Vice.
was like
Phone
forged or
records. They
something.
didn't put the MCI logo.
Yes, the MCI logo. That's right.
I'm figuring that's where this is heading.
I thought that sounded familiar. So I can only imagine that the prosecutor's jaw must have hit the floor like a damn cartoon. Because the prosecutor's like, how do we not know about this? Like, they should have known about that in the discovery portion, before all the whole trial gets started.
Right.
Well, it turns out that this document was given to the police and prosecutor, but they missed it in those 30,000 pages of evidence.
That's bad news.
That's really bad news. So police are forced to admit that they missed this crucial piece of evidence. And Harvey's defense attorney is like, the money was owed to Harvey. He got the money back, and therefore he had no motive to kill Stephen. Harvey Morrow's innocent. So, unfortunately, with that note basically shattering the prosecution's entire case, the judge declares a mistrial. Yeah, Stephen's friends were devastated. And I feel like the police were too. Like, they had worked so hard, and then because they missed one thing, they could have potentially blown the case and a murderer could walk free.
Yeah, but it's a pretty big thing they missed.
And they admit that they messed up in like the dateline and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So a new prosecutor is assigned to the case, and the first thing he does is check out that promissory note claiming Stephen's dad owed Harvey that money. And Stephen's friends are like, absolutely not. There is no possible way that Bailey would have ever borrowed money from anyone.
He didn't need to.
Right, nor did he even need to borrow money. So the prosecutor and the detective start going over this loan document with a fine-tooth comb. And when they get to the dotted line where Bailey's signature was, the signature doesn't match any other document with Bailey's signature. The letter was forged.
I'm glad they finally caught that.
And I think that that's what happened when his car got broken into. I think that they were looking for something with Bailey's signature on it.
Oh, possibly.
That's my speculation. They never really bring it up again.
Okay.
So they go back to trial that same year in November of 2011. And the prosecutor shows the court every single check that Harvey wrote to himself from Stephen's bank account. And of course, all these checks line up with the purchases in the yacht's ledger. So the prosecutor also shows the GPS records and the cell phone records. And in addition to the cell phone records showing where the phones pinged, the records also showed that even though Harvey and Stephen had basically spoken to each other on the phone almost every day for the last few years, once May 4th came and Stephen disappeared, Harvey never, ever called his phone again.
So it's like he knew he was gone. Why call? No point.
Why? Exactly. You gotta cover your tracks better, bro. I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah.
The defense used the same bullshit they used in the preliminary hearing, that Stephen was depressed, his dad was dead, his radio career was over, he's getting old, he was alone, wah, wah, wah. But then the medical examiner got on the stand and they had to testify that where Stephen was shot, technically it could have been self-inflicted. I guess the angle of it just made it weird that it could be self-inflicted.
Yeah.
But then, like a true narcissist, Harvey gets up on the stand, which all crime junkies know. Rarely, if ever, is it a good idea to have the defendant testify.
Yes, unless you're innocent, don't get on the stand. Like truly innocent.
But again, as a con man and a narcissist, Harvey was not going to miss a chance to talk about himself.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
Right.
It's his favorite thing to talk about. So he gets up there, he's cool, calm, and smooth. He's collected, no problems. He had an answer for everything. And he even had a new story this time. This time, he claimed that while the loan document with Stephen's dad was fake, the real story is that Stephen borrowed money from Harvey and he was paying him back. But there was no documents to prove it because it was all done verbally and sealed with a handshake.
I really do feel like if he wouldn't have got on the stand, there might have been enough reasonable doubt. And any shred of reasonable doubt is enough to, declare somebody innocent or not guilty at least. So his own stupid personality, I think, got him convicted, which good, because he deserves every bit of what he got.
That's exactly how I feel. Like, had he not gotten up, I think, and had to run his mouth, I think that he may have gotten acquitted.
You could even play the, like, I assisted him. He was so depressed and asked me as a friend to go out. I'm going to commit suicide. Can you take me out to the water? And just, there are a million defenses he could have presented, but just, he screwed it up.
Well, the jury deliberated for a little less than 2 days, but ultimately came back and declared Harvey guilty. His official conviction was guilty of the crime of willful, deliberate, and premeditated first-degree murder of Stephen B. Williams.
Good, because that's what it was.
Yep. So Stephen's friends were all there, and, they cheered, and then they were also there when Harvey was sentenced, and one of the friends got up and read a statement on behalf of, all the friends, which said in part, quote, "For years you ate his food, lived and worked on what he thought was a common goal, the whole time stealing from him and ultimately taking what was most precious, his life. You worship a false god, the god of arrogance, ego, and greed.
Wow.
Today, our nightmare ends. Today, yours really begins." End quote.
That's a smackdown there.
I loved it.
Yes.
So Harvey's smug, cocky bitch ass was given life without parole, LWAT. So just real quick to finish this episode, what actually happened the day Stephen died? How did it all go down? Of course, we'll never know for sure, but police believe that Stephen confronted Harvey about the money, which of course Harvey didn't like.
I'm sure
that.
he did. Yeah.
Right. So when the men were on the boat, they think that Stephen was probably on the deck, maybe looking out towards the ocean, when Harvey came up right behind him and just shot him in the head, which would have caused Stephen to most likely fall forward right into the water, which would explain why there was no blood on the boat. So that is the sad story of radio DJ Stephen B. Williams.
That's awful. And I feel like you want to see the good in people and you don't want to fault people for being good,
Yeah.
But sometimes this is what happens, and it really sucks.
I think all you can do is try to be a good person yourself and pay it forward, and just hope that by you paying it forward, someone else will pay it forward to you.
Yeah, hopefully. But let us know what you think, you guys. Yeah,
we'd love to hear. You can hit us up on our socials at Murder Unscripted. You can hit us up on our website, www.murderunscriptedpod.com. Or you can shoot us an email at murderunscriptedpod@gmail.com.
Perfect. And next week, we have another crazy case coming about another DJ. And this is one that I can almost guarantee that nobody's ever heard. I have not done any research to see if this has been done on any other pods, but I only know of one other show. It was an early Forensic Files. It was, I want to say season 9. And I was probably in my 3rd year there. And I remember covering it, but it's a really sad story about another person who was beloved among our community and on the radio waves. So we'll bring you that next week.
Well, I'm excited for that. You told me the name, but I don't know the case. So
Good.
I'm going to do my best not to research it, because I want to be surprised.
Yep, it's a good one.
All right, guys. Well, definitely stay tuned. And don't forget to tune in on Friday for the next MU Mini. Until then, be kind, stay safe, and remember, perverts don't wear signs that say they're perverts.
They do apparently look like the skipper from Gilligan's Island, so beware.
The Professor and Marianne. Isn't that how it went?
Yeah, here on Gilligan's Island.
A 3-hour tour. Okay, bye.
That tour was doomed from the beginning. See ya.